Hey, good Tuesday morning, everybody. Welcome to the Exterior Home Solutions Volquest podcast. I am Eric Kane alongside Austin Price and Grant Ramey. You can always visit our friends over at exteriorhomesolutions.com or by picking up the phone and dialing 865-524-5888. And they've been local. They've been trusted since 1999. That is our friends over at Exterior Home Solutions. Got a lot to get into here at the top of the week. Chaz Lanier, he is officially a Tennessee Volunteer. 865 Live was a success over campus this past weekend with a number of highly touted prospects. And, of course, Tennessee baseball, the two-time SEC champions here in 2024. All that and more coming your way here on a Tuesday morning. Let's start with Chaz Lanier. Grant Ramey, it's been a long, 5 weeks, month-long Chaz Lanier sweepstakes. And finally, that final puzzle piece, the missing link to the 2024-25 roster, it's set. Chaz Lanier committed to Tennessee late Friday evening, and Tennessee already announced the signing of Chaz Lanier from over the weekend, and huge deal for Tennessee and a really, really good player.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, you had to have him, and Tennessee went out and got him. And I think it says something about Tennessee to kind of be the favorite from the moment he entered the portal to withstanding some pushes from other programs, obviously, most notably Kentucky. And find a way to get the kid here and to get it done, to get the deal on the table and get everything figured out and get it finalized and finished. And I think it says something about Chaz Lanier, too, that he left money on the table. He could have gone to BYU for a lot more money, it sounds like. He could have gone to Kentucky for what sounds like more money. But he's a Nashville kid. He wanted to be at home in Tennessee. He stayed at Tennessee. And I think it says something about him to leave money on the table in this day and age. To not go to the highest bidder, to kind of come here and be that missing piece that we've been talking about the last few weeks. It's huge. I mean, Tennessee had to get it done. Tennessee got it done. Credit to the Vols for making it happen.
Yeah, as far as all the kind of behind the scenes, why is it taking so long? Nonsense that recruiting can take at times. I feel like Chaz Lanier, Grant, really wasn't about all that. Like I think that was more the agent, which is what you see a lot of times in this world. And that's not knocking the agent. He's just doing what, that's what they do. I mean, his job is to get his clients the best deals they can. And, he's going to, use leverage and all that. And Tennessee ends up staying strong at the end. And you're right. He could have got double the money and went to BYU or, almost double the money to go to Kentucky and, chose to come here because, wanted to stay home and develop. So the old Earth's got big in the window on Friday. And, it is impressive that, Tennessee was, kind of, the team to beat all along and was able to survive a lot of the stuff that some recruits, can't survive because they get so starstruck by an extra 50 cents or the shiny objects. Chaz Lanier wasn't that way. He went and took the visits. He listened to everybody, but at the end of the day, looked for other things besides the NIL, component to this.
Yeah, Grant, what were some of those other things in terms of, I mean, if you could have got double the money, why didn't you go just get double the money? I mean, was it some of the feedback that he got at the G League Elite Series saying, hey, you need to work on this, this, and this, and felt like Tennessee would be the best option for that? Was it a combination of that and this being home, a combination of that, and you want to go win? I mean, again, let's kind of break it down. Why didn't you just go get that money, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
I think it's because he wanted to be at Tennessee. I think it's because of the fit at Tennessee. I think it's because of kind of where he wants to grow his game. I mean, he was on a podcast a few weeks ago, the No Ceilings NBA podcast, and it sounded like Rick Barnes was puppeting this kid in terms of what he was saying. Like he wanted to go to the G League camp and work on his defense. He wanted to become a two-way player. He like everything he said and the way he said it sounded like exactly what you would hear Rick Barnes say about somebody. So I think it's a lot about fit, and it's a lot about being a Nashville kid and wanting to stay at home and play for your home state school. And really to be that missing piece. And Tennessee held a spot for him for a while. I mean, this was the only name on the board. Tennessee was all in. All the eggs were in the Chaz Lanier basket. So I assume that's something that he noticed and he appreciated, I guess, because, Kentucky's Kentucky's a brand, but it's a first-year head coach, a first-year Kentucky coach in Pope, and who knows what that's going to be, and who knows what that roster is going to look like. It's a collection of a lot of portal guys. How are they all going to fit together and stuff like that? The same thing at BYU. It's a first-year coach. It's a lot of portal guys. Who knows what it's going to feel like? Tennessee, it feels like you're the difference in maybe being a top 10 team and not being a top 10 team. So I think it's a lot of things, the culture, the program, all that stuff, but also the fit and the pieces around him and kind of the way Tennessee sold this whole thing to him.
Feels like Tennessee's now done, right, in terms of roster additions, unless you go and get a late summer ad, recruiting ad. It feels like Tennessee's pretty much set, right? This was the last puzzle piece?
I mean, you still have 2 open spots, but it feels like Tennessee's done with the pieces that really matter for next season's roster, like the rotation guys. I do expect them to leave 1 spot open. I don't know what they're going to do with that other spot, but it feels like that other spot is going to be kind of into the bench, developmental, unless something changes and there's another name that pops up and something happens there. But it feels like whoever gets added is going to be a multi-year player and start out kind of as a depth piece and work their way up.
Tennessee better on paper this time, like right now, than it was this time last year, Grant?
Yes.
I mean, it's just hard for me to go there because of what we just watched Dalton Knecht do for a season. And it just to have that guy that could take over a game like he could, like, man, it's going to be so hard to replace that. Now you bring back Chaz and Darlington Dubar are the 2 most efficient scorers in college basketball, returning to college basketball next season, according to that Synergy basketball stat. So obviously that's huge. Igor Milicic has been impressive. Obviously that's huge. Felix Akpara helps you with losing Jonas Adu and Tobe Awaka. So it's hard for me to say they're better, but they've addressed needs about as well as they could have, because it feels like every guy they circled in the portal was a guy they ended up landing.
Here's what I would say. If you're saying, are they better from this point right now to this point last year, to me, it's not close. Like, I think the roster's way better. What you can't factor in is a year ago, we didn't know what Dalton Knecht was individually.
And we don't know what Chaz Lanier is.
And we don't, correct. And so that's a bit unfair to compare. Now, as far as depth, as far as the ability, just pure athleticism, ability to go create a deeper team from a basketball standpoint, I do think this team's better. I just think there were so many limitations and scars with some of those guys last year that, I don't think there's that coming in. In fact, I wonder if Josiah was so easy to defer. Santi was a great teammate to defer. That's where I worry about. This team is Double D. Is Double D just gonna be like, hey, just take your thing, Chaz? You know what I mean? Like, it's to me, that part of it's going to be interesting to watch, because you again have guys who want to be the guy, and that's a great thing, right? Like that. I'm not saying you need multiple of those guys, but it's going to be a learning curve. I think this team will likely get better as the season goes along. I think there might be a few growing pains in November, December, and then January, February, which is what you want. Like, you don't want them to peak too early. But I think that the athleticism and depth it's not close, in my opinion.
I think what you miss is what you might miss is the 5th-year guys, just because, like, Santi didn't have a great redshirt senior season, but he was a redshirt senior, and he's going to help you in a lot of different ways. And just experience-wise, same thing with Josiah. I mean, Josiah had a pretty good year, but he's also such a veteran. He's been around. He's been through it. And even Dalton, like, he hadn't been through it at this level, but he was 23 years old. I mean, he's a veteran. He's a mature guy. He's been around. He's played a lot of basketball. So I think there's going to be growing pains there. But at the same time, what helps offset that is Zakai Ziegler, your point guard, is the face of your program, the guy who's been around. It's good to have that kind of veteran at that position. Jemai Mashak, you know what you're going to get defensively from him. Like, it's good to have those pieces. I would say, sitting here a few weeks ago and you had 7 open scholarship spots, they've filled it out about as well as they could have based on what they're trying to get accomplished and kind of not getting caught completely off guard and figuring out a way to put a pretty good team on the floor.
Now, the real work begins for Rick Barnes, because let's face it, if you're in these transfers, you didn't come here to sit. if you're the guys that have been here, and you don't expect to sit, especially the ones like Jemai Meshack, who, kind of was that six-man type role a year ago. You expect to expand your role this coming fall. So now he's got to figure out like the chemistry part of who's starting, who's comfortable not starting, all that stuff. Because to me, that's still an interesting dynamic in this team. It's just kind of how they all work. Jordan Gainey, Cam Carr, bigger piece, right?
JP Estrella.
I think Estrella will because size factor, right? But like Cam Carr, there he is. It's going to be interesting.
And I think they've already started managing that, because I think they would have been a lot harder after Cade Tyson if they weren't worried about some of these other guys on the roster and wanting to have some of these other guys continue their development and not be in the portal this time next year because they didn't play enough this coming season. So I think that's a line they're already trying to walk.
Ironically, and a lot of people don't understand this, is Tennessee was, I think Cade Tyson really wanted to go to Tennessee. Tennessee kind of backed off Cade Tyson because they're worried about getting too deep and getting basically stunning the growth of a guy like Cam Carr, right? Like, it's like I always talk about, like, if you were going to take, unless you were taking a top high-end running back out of the portal after spring, you're not just bringing a body in that could potentially stunt the growth of Cam Seldon. It's just not what you're going to do. Same thing here. You don't want to stunt the growth of Cam Carr because ultimately they think Cam Carr is going to be really special.
And Cade Tyson is a really good basketball player, but it also felt like you kind of had a little bit of Cade Tyson in Igor Milicic. You kind of had a little bit of Cade Tyson. It wasn't like there was a glaring vacancy where you needed Cade Tyson to step in and fill that void. And I don't think Tennessee and they've said it before, they don't want to be a program that's got 5-6 open spots every single year, and you're just trading guys in and out of the portal every April. So I think that's already, I agree with what AP said. That's something they're already trying to manage.
Grant, so as we transition out of this, what's next? We continue to hear things. Last summer, it's like, oh, that Don Connect guy, he's the real deal. Like the summer practices coming together. I know that they went abroad last summer and all that, but what's next for this basketball team here in this offseason when that chemistry factor starts to really kind of chime in and this team becomes individuals into an actual team?
Yeah, I think you go from being a team on paper to a team on the floor. Igor is already enrolled. Felix is already enrolled. Got to get Chaz here. Obviously, got to get Darlin Stone-DeBar here. I don't think he's enrolled as far as I know. I think he was graduating pretty recently from Hofstra. So you go from the team you've assembled on paper to put these guys on the floor and figure out how everybody fits together and how this thing's going to work. And that's what the summer's all about. It's June, July, August. It feels like there's no off season. They're basically in Pratt the same amount they are through the winter and the spring. So you'll start hearing some stuff, I'm sure, about who might be standing out and all this stuff. We started hearing that about Dalton last year. I think Igor Milicic has already been somebody that they've been impressed with, and maybe they think he's a lot better than what the rankings show in terms of portal guys. So all that stuff will start happening. This team will start coming together and figuring out how all these pieces fit together.
It was once called the Memorial Weekend Recruiting Events. Then it was rebranded into Rocky Topapalooza, and now it is the 865 Live, whatever you want to call it. It's one of the biggest weekends in terms of recruiting on the calendar each and every year for Tennessee football. That happened this past weekend, and looked like Tennessee showed out pretty well. Austin Price, a number of highly rated 4-star, a couple of 5-stars, some commits who were on campus. Overall thoughts from a Tennessee perspective on how the weekend fared for the Volunteers?
Yeah, really good weekend. And you'd expect it to be. Kids are going to have a good time on visits. But I thought Tennessee, did themselves a lot of good with David Sanders again. It's his third time on campus unofficially since the calendar turned to April. And we'll be back here in a few weeks for his official visit. Did not speak afterwards, which, again, as we pointed out on the 2-minute drill, was fine by us because he's like, hey, you can be that On3 event thing on Tuesday? I was like, yep, we'll talk to you there, pal, and go out of here, which means he couldn't talk to anybody else. And that was fine by us. In talking to people, he had a big time. He and Nick Moore really clicked well. And to me, they're personality-wise, both very, very smart kids, could literally carry on a conversation like a 40-year-old, both of them. I continue to feel like Tennessee is, in a really good spot there. And again, they'll have to survive official visits, but it feels like Tennessee's got a ton of momentum there. That's why you saw Steve and Chad predict Tennessee if the thing was ending, today when they put out that article last week. But again, Tennessee will have to survive the Clemson visit. Comes up, I think, next weekend. Georgia, Ohio State, the who's who in college football. But kid clicks well with Glenn Ellerbe. Kid clicks well with George McIntyre, and again, Tennessee's in a good spot as we exit the month of May, heading into official visits. Onus Konabeni, the cornerback from the state of South Carolina, who's originally from Canada, named Tennessee his leader. Now, again, he'll be back here for an official visit in the month of June. Tennessee did a nice job when he was here unofficially a month or so ago, and then followed that up with 865 Live. Tennessee's looking to add corners. They'd love to add him, Donovan Starr, who's a kid from Ravenwood that's really picked up traction in the recruiting game the last 4 to 6 weeks or so, adding a ton of offers. Plays for Will Hester over there at Ravenwood in the Mid-State, and measured in just shy of 6 foot, about 180 pounds. Again, another kid that continues to get more and more traction out there in the recruiting world. And then Nick Moore is a guy that Tennessee was late to offer, but now that they have offered, has really picked it up on. The Jefferson County native, your boy Eric Kane.
It's a good player. Good player.
He is a good player. And honestly reminds me a ton of Cooper from a standpoint of about 6'2", almost 6'3", just a hair shorter than 6'3". He weighed about 298 pounds. He doesn't carry 298. Like, he looks like he weighs 270, but like freaky good athlete and an awesome defensive lineman at the high school level. I mean, the kid is super disruptive, and so like for my liking, I feel like Tennessee has really picked up the pace and they're making up ground quick with Nick Moore. He's going to take official visits to West Virginia, Vanderbilt. He's going to go to Clemson on June 3rd. He'll be back here either the 14th or the 21st. They were locking that in this weekend. And again, I would be shocked if Nick Moore doesn't pick Tennessee in the end. But again, they're having to overcome a few things, just being a little bit later to the game. But I feel like they're doing that in quick order for Nick Moore. And then, Tennessee's in it for guys like Jared Smith. Matt wrote about him on Monday. In it way more for, as he said, Tennessee's way more in this than people realize. The question is the kid from Thompson really going to leave the state of Alabama? I mean, most kids from Thompson go to Auburn, they go to Alabama. It kind of is what it is, right? But again, if you're Tennessee, you swing, you take your shot here and see what happens. I mean, Jordan Ross a year ago got out of the state of Alabama, and so you just never know how this thing's going to play out. And Jared Smith is a freaky long kid, man. I mean, he's tall, long arms. I mean, he looks every bit the part as a high school kid. If he had walked by you and you didn't know who he was, you'd have thought he was on Tennessee's team already. He is a good looking kid. And so, just a productive weekend overall. Jamie French, I still think Tennessee's trailing there. I mean, Texas is ahead of Tennessee. LSU probably too. But I mean, he's such a nice kid. He has a great time everywhere he goes. Like, he legit is one of the nicest kids, always smiling, always just, very polite. So I think that he has a good time because he's such a nice kid, right? Like, he doesn't, I think he'll have trouble telling schools no, because that's just, kind of the kind of kid he is. The on-3 prediction machine, still has Ohio State favored. I can see that. I mean, like, even though he's kind of, picked Texas as the team that has the most momentum for him right now, along with LSU. I mean, Ohio State's the team that's always kind of been thought to be the team to beat. And, does he get up there for an OB? Last time I looked, he did not have one scheduled, but like they're still the team that kind of just hangs around a perceived favorite for so long. We'll see what all happens there with Jamie French. But Tennessee would love to add a receiver, and he spent this past weekend with George McIntyre. He'll be at the On3 event in Nashville coming up tomorrow with George McIntyre, with David Sanders. And George will be working him. He'll be working Travis Smith. He'll be working Caleb Cunningham, all three of which will be in Nashville for the On3 event.
AP, I want to go back to one of the prospects you brought up in Jefferson County's Nick Moore. If I'm just a Tennessee fan and I look into Nick Moore and then I say, okay, high school coach is Spencer Riley, it's like, oh, well, yeah, he was a Tennessee Volunteer. He was part of the national championship team captain. It seems simplistic, but I mean, how much do you think that favors the Vols. It's not like it hurts them whatsoever to have a VFL being his head coach, right?
Oh, 100%. It definitely helps. And it helps Nick. I mean, again, Nick's not going to play center for Jefferson County because that's not what they need him to play. But like that's probably what he plays at the next level, center or guard. And Spencer will help him with all that stuff, regardless of where Nick goes. I mean, it's an invaluable resource for Nick. And again, Nick's a smart kid. I mean, like really, really smart. I mean, if he picked Vanderbilt, would I be shocked? Probably a little bit, but kind of no, just because he is a smart kid. I mean, this is a kid that literally, like if I went in for if I went in for a surgery in 20 years, I wouldn't be shocked if he was the one operating on me. Like that's the kind of, he is a smart kid.
That's how we do down in Dumpling Valley, AP.
Yeah, he's the opposite of you. But just a great kid. And again, I think that what he is finding is Tennessee, as he called it, they're very genuine. And again, they were late to offer him. And I think that every time that happens, that people get their feelings. I think they've quickly got out of their feelings about Tennessee being a touch late. And I think that they have really gravitated towards, what Glenn Ellerby is, what Josh Heupel is, instead of, you offered me 3 months after so-and-so did. Right? So, I think as he told me on the phone that night, I'm in the mode of forgive and forget. And he really, I think, has applied that because he has really taken to kind of how Tennessee's recruiting him and found that they were, quote, genuine. And I think that plays well over the next month because I think Tennessee will continue to put the pedal down.
AP, I've got a Michael Scott explain it to me like I'm 5 question. These kind of events like 865 Live, how do they differ from other visits? Is it the collection of talent? Is it the way the visits are laid out? Like what makes these kind of, I don't know, differentiate from other standard visits?
Other unofficial visits? Official visits are different. They have more of a
right.
Other unofficial visits like a junior day. This is still just much more laid back. I mean, like they're scavenger hunting around the city, around the campus. They go and the kids, get a kickball game going. They go over to the golf facility and they putt on the green and do other team activities. So it's more relationship building, like those type things. Whereas like on a regular unofficial visit, you're just kind of potted out. Like you and your family are with, said QC or GA, and you see the position coach from time to time, and you see the head coach from time to time, but you're more, bouncing around and going to see, facilities in the locker room and all that stuff. This is more like, hey man, we're all the offensive linemen go hang out, all the wide receivers go hang out. At times we're all going to hang out together. And it's just more of a bonding experience more so than your regular old junior day.
AP, it feels like, it really helps Tennessee out, right? I mean, you mentioned a couple of those guys who are going to be at the On 3 Elite series there in Nashville this week. Tennessee has this 865 Live the weekend before, guys coming in town, staying. It feels like this, I don't know if anybody planned it this way, but it feels like it really works in Tennessee's favor, right?
100%. And the fact that there's not much lag time between the event and when OVs start. So like basically for Tennessee, their big official visit weekends, they'll have a few on that weekend of the 7th. But most of their kids will be here the 14th or the 21st. And so, basically you're going to have 2-3 weeks in between this past weekend and when they come right back. So like, it's basically like boom, boom. And the momentum you build from this visit just can carry on for some, not all, but for some right into the OVs. And so like, I just think that it's helped Tennessee the last couple of years. Anytime you can get them here for that May event, if you look at the hit rate, it's been pretty good. I mean, it's never going to be 100, but even if you're saying you're 50 or 40, like that's a really good hit rate on kids that, you get here for the end of May, take the official visit in June, end up landing in the end.
AP, I know you mentioned a number of guys, and if you mentioned him, apologies, but I do want you to touch on real quick the running back from Baylor, Mills Knight, and then anybody else that maybe you haven't mentioned that you think Tennessee did a really good job with this weekend?
Yeah, Shakai Mills Knight. I'm glad you brought him up because I was running through all those kids, and sometimes they just slip through the cracks.
Hey, and Grant and I thank you for filibustering there for 10 minutes. I'm being serious. We thank you for that.
So Shakai, again, I mean, this is a Tennessee-Miami battle. Miami has some momentum with him. Tennessee has some momentum with him. Going to take all these official visits. I think in a perfect world, he'd like to do something coming out of official visits. I believe his mom will be here, gets from Canada, plays at Baylor. I mean, he plays just down the road in Chattanooga, but he's not a Chattanooga kid, right?
Yeah.
It's not the same as Nick Moore, who grew up in Jeff County and, has always been within a stone's throw of the Knox County line. It's a little bit different, but at the same time, there's enough Tennessee flavor around the Baylor people that gives Tennessee a real shot there. So it's Tennessee and Miami. Ole Miss is in it too. And so I ultimately think that's what it comes down to. I think it plays out with the OBs, and I do think his mom is coming here for the Tennessee OB, which I think is big. I'm not sure she's going to all of the official visits, but I know she's coming to this one. So I think that one will help. She'll come down from Canada and get a good look at. I just love his profile picture with the glasses and all that stuff.
It's got to mean something. It's got to mean something when you get Mama here, especially if she's coming all the way from up north. And we'll continue to follow that, and tons of stuff from the 865 Live from this past weekend already from you and Matt Ray, and tons of stuff throughout this week coming up here at Volquest.com. We'll shift gears here to continue on with this Tuesday podcast, and we'll talk a little bit about the SEC Tournament Champion Tennessee Volunteers. That and a whole lot more, but first, a word from our proud sponsors. That's Exterior Home Solutions.
Severe weather can strike at any time in East Tennessee, and Mother Nature can do severe damage to the first and most important line of defense that you and your family have against Mother Nature, and that is your roof. Whenever she strikes, make sure that you call the people that I call. Make sure you trust the people that I trust, and that's my friends at Exterior Home Solutions, because they're more than friends, they're truly family.
We've talked Chaz Lanier. We have talked recruiting. But now let's talk about the champions of the Southeastern Conference, not only in the regular season, but the tournament. Tennessee baseball overcoming an initial loss to Vanderbilt, coming back, winning a handful of games, beating LSU in the championship game, Eric Kane. And, they did it. And I don't feel like that they expended a ton of energy with the pitching staff. They basically threw a bunch of arms that some they throw out of the bullpen a lot, but some that they don't use a whole very much at all. I think it probably made them a little deeper and a little more confident in some of those younger players like Dylan Lloyd heading into the postseason.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, how can you not feel good about what Dylan Lloyd did for you the other day in the SEC tournament championship game against LSU? You talk about a guy that Chris Collinsworth. Here's a guy. He threw one inning of SEC ball all year long, I'm pretty sure. And then you come in and throw 4 2/3, pick up the win, and shut down, arguably the hottest team in America right now in LSU. I mean, what a performance there from a kid right down the road. We talked about Nick Moore earlier, Jeff County. I mean, this kid was pitching at Pigeon Forge and doing a heck of a job. But I mean, what a story there for Dylan Lloyd and then Marcus Phillips the day before. I mean, sure, he got a little dicey there in the 8th inning and the 9th inning, but as Christian Moore said after the game against Vanderbilt. That is the Marcus Phillips that we've been waiting on all year long. I mean, we talked to players and coaches before the season, and you say, who's a pitcher that we're not talking about right now, but we will be talking about. And everybody says Marcus Phillips. He's probably got the nastiest stuff. He throws hard, great competitor out of JUCO, and it really just hasn't materialized as quickly as everybody thought that it would. But boy, that was huge. So, what you saw from Marcus Phillips, what you saw from Dylan Lloyd. Sure, you're going to throw Kirby every single day, but that's what you're going to do. The guy's got a rubber arm, and he's not playing professional baseball. And he didn't overtax Nate Snead. He didn't overtax, Stamos or Causey or, any of those other bullpen arms. So you had LSU that, outlasted South Carolina in a pair of games, 12 to 11 and 11 to 10 over the course of the 5 days or 6 days they were there. Tennessee never had to use, 13 pitchers in a game. And so Yeah, I mean, congratulations to Tennessee. I think you're exactly right. They didn't overtax anybody, and it's just one of those things where you just see truly how good you are. I mean, if you can withstand a loss on Wednesday, run the table the rest of the way, and beat these quality teams in the Southeastern Conference tournament all in a span of just 5 days, I'm not breaking any news here, but you're a pretty daggone good baseball team.
Well, I just think ultimately, let's go back to Lloyd for a minute. I mean, he comes from a pitch and force program that has pumped out multiple Power 5 guys. Will Crow went to South Carolina. There's been others that are playing in the Major League Baseball, either farm systems or playing at the big league level, that have come out of there. Mike Gwynn does a fantastic job over there at Pigeon Forge of bringing in talent, cultivating some local talent, and so like Lloyd, it does not surprise me at all that he kind of stepped in and did what he did, because they just that's what they do at Pigeon Forge. I mean, I know that sounds crazy to think about, but if you really pay attention to what that little small program has done from a state tournament level, state championship level, they've been there, they've won titles repetitively over there at Pigeon Forge, and then Phillips. I mean, he flashed it at Kentucky. I thought that was the moment you really kind of saw him, like whoa, this guy could be really, really good, and he's just kind of gotten better and better. And if he can kind of harness the passion, which again helps him, but probably put him in a couple of tough spots too. The bullpen all of a sudden go along with Kirby and his rubber arm and slinging it in there and bending them from 11 to 4. It's an impressive looking bullpen all of a sudden. And again, they mix and match, kind of their tandems, whether it's Stamos going to Causey, whether it's, Beam going to Aaron. They have a nice combination that they feel really confident in. So do they have this dominant pitcher? Do they have Skeens? No, but like they have kind of combos that really work.
Yeah, it's been a little unorthodox. It's been a little unique the way they've gone about the staff. And I've written about it a little bit, openers to long relief, piggybacks, and 2 of the 3 starts on the weekend. And you got Drew Beam right there in the middle. And again, the emergence of Aaron Combs, who has been so good this back half of the season. And of course, what, Causey's meant to you and all that. So, I mean, they've continued to evolve and getting guys like Marcus Phillips and Dylan Lloyd to step up in big situations like that. It's only going to help them, in regional play where, it's not going to be easy. And supers where it's not going to be easy if you're blessed to get to that part. And of course, if you get to Omaha, they're going to need all those guys again. Grant, I saw that picture there of Christian Moore just kind of putting his hands up when he was on second base. Like, it's almost like, what more can I do? Christian Moore's historic season's incredible. How he did not make the all-tournament team where Blake Burke was literally pumping him up, like, pulling on his shirt before they announced the turn of MVP, and it turned out to be Blake Burke and not Christian Moore. Christian Moore in one of those games had 3 extra base hits, a home run. I think that was against Texas A&M. But point being, Christian Moore again had a great week, and he's arguably the best player in the country right now.
Triple Crown, right? SEC Triple Crown winner,
Yeah.
and still not the SEC player. Something about the SEC. Is not a big fan of Christian Moore. Here's my question for you, Eric, and I heard Tony mention this.
Motivating.
I do too. I heard Tony mention this on the TV broadcast. He talked about 2022 being like the dream season. Nothing could go wrong until it turned into a disaster. Game 3 against Notre Dame. Then last year, it felt like a lot of disaster, and then it turned into making a run to Omaha and stuff going right and going on the road to get there and all that stuff in regional, super regional, all that. So how much do you think this team has benefited from the combination of those 2 years and how they kind of contrasted and kind of ended differently? And now it feels like this team maybe, 50 wins. They've won the tournament again. They're going to be probably the number 1 overall seed. Like, how do you think this team has benefited from those 2 seasons and the different experiences that they were?
Yeah, I mean, I think that this question was asked, I believe, to Hunter Inslee in the post-game press conference on Sunday after the championship win. I mean, there's not only but a handful of guys who have been here to kind of experience all that. You got Drew Beam, you got Hunter Inslee, you've got Xander Seacrest, you've got Charlie Taylor, you got Simo and Burke. I mean, there's more than a handful, I guess. But they kind of went through that, some guys even on the 21 team, but they went through that record-breaking 2022 season and then just the polar opposite of how bad you were in 23 and then kind of changed. And this year they've just kind of been steady Eddie, wire to wire. They've evolved a little bit, but they've just been good the entire year. I think you kind of learn a little bit from the past, and more than anything, I feel like you just know, man, hey, this is such a long journey, and regular season's done now. SEC tournament's done now, sure, but man, you are still just kind of getting going in terms of your run and trying to accomplish the goal, the number one goal that you want to accomplish, knowing that regional play is going to be a battle, and you can't really afford to go down in a game. And super regionals coming up after that if you're blessed to get to that point. So I do think you kind of learn from the past. I think Tony Vitello learns from the past too. I mean, you like to think the players evolve over time. I like to think the coaches evolve over time, and he and Frank Anderson and Josh Elander, kind of how they went about 21 compared to 22, pushing the buttons in 23, and even changing things up here in 24. Maybe if you're in a similar situation this go around, you might do things that just a little bit different because you learned maybe it didn't work out so well for you the time before. So I do think there are lessons to be learned, but more than anything, it's just experience. And this team overall knows exactly what postseason ball is like, and it should benefit from it. Plus, it's a pretty good baseball team to begin with.
When you look at the offensive side, they were home run early on. Then they kind of had that about a week and a half, 2 weeks, kind of went into a lull. They were still winning games. They were winning 3-2. They didn't hit the long ball as much. They kind of picked that back up, right? Even a guy like Billy Amick was over before he hit that 3-run homer against LSU in all the SEC tournament. How do they avoid that untimely, kind of lull?
It's a good question, man. I mean, it feels like, not everybody in your lineup's going to be on every single day. That's just kind of not really how the sport works. But you're right. You can't afford to have your number 3 hitter go 0 for 17 over the course of 4 games with 5 strikeouts. That just can't happen for you. And thankfully, Billy snapped out of it. And what a huge home run that was you're referencing, because, for the most part, all things considered, LSU's arms did a heck of a job on Sunday. Heck of a job. Tennessee had 14 strikeouts. They, held them to 1 for something and runners in scoring position. I wrote about it in the 4 takes, but they did a really good job against Tennessee, and Tennessee just rode that 3-run home run for pretty much the entire game up until Hunter Inslee drove in your 4th run, and that was obviously huge as well. So you can't afford to have those type of lulls, and I just think it's continuing to keep your head down and going to work. Teammates were encouraging Billy Amick, and as bad as it looked, there was a game against, I guess it was Vanderbilt. He torched the ball a couple of times and just came up empty. Yeah. It just looks worse because with bases loaded, you pop out the end of the inning. And that's what people remember, right? So he was trying to work through it and everything, but good to see him get that home run. Kavaris Tears, who was on the all-tournament team, had a heck of a week. He had a Sunday, just a nightmare Sunday. Sometimes that's the way the ball bounces, and it's unfortunate. But typically when you have an offense like Tennessee and a lineup 1 through 9 like Tennessee, you don't want anybody to be off. But if somebody is off, typically you're good enough to kind of overcome that, because you have the Moores and the Burks and the Dylan Drylings and Hunter Inslee right now. And that's kind of what Tennessee's blessed to do. Whereas a lot of teams, if your sluggers, your RBI guys are off, man, you're in a world of hurt because you don't have a whole lot of power up and down that lineup. But Tennessee's got it.
Well, the ball will bounce now to Lindsey Nelson Stadium. Tennessee will host a regional this weekend. If they are able to make it through that, they'll host a super regional next weekend. So Tennessee baseball comes back home to the friendly confines of Lindsey Nelson Stadium. Tennessee baseball will have that place packed out. And, if they can only make it to, that super regional, I can't wait for game 2 when Tennessee will be the away team, because that is the most hated rule in all of college athletics.
Yep. Don't
forget to give the people at Exterior Home Solutions a call today. Give them a call. You need help on roofing, siding. We appreciate all that they do. 524-5888, or visit them online at exteriorhomesolutions.com. For Eric Kane and Grant Ramey, I'm Austin Price. We'll talk to you over on the General's Quarters. We'll also talk to you on the Thursday podcast, where Brent Hubbs makes his triumphant return.